Alright, hey guys, this is the TheAirsoftTech podcast. I'm Ryan, or Legacy Airsoft, and I'm here with Ryan, or TheAirsoftTech. This is the fourth podcast we've done together, and I think it's the seventh in Ryan's entire series. And the first topic we're going to talk about today, like we've been doing, is our more recent builds. Now, recently, I actually haven't made too much progress teching. I have a personal DSG that is kind of stalling, waiting for parts to come in. I was doing an entire externals kind of overhaul because I don't really focus on externals too often. I'm usually an internals guy. And what happened was I received a very nice GMP outer barrel from eHobby Asia, and I happened to get the threading clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And due to that, I have also ordered from a different website a flash hider and suppressor combo, obviously threaded for counterclockwise. So I'm still waiting for those to come in, and when that comes in, I have to swap with a friend who, thank God, has the same exact flash hider combo, except he did the opposite of me, is he ordered the wrong threading for the flash hider combo, not his barrel, so we're going to swap and make it all perfect. Aside from that gun, I have basically taken some time to just work on personal stuff, and I've set aside 3 specific guns. My 416 build, my SCAR, and my new SR25K. I have an entire, very intricate build list on my thread. I'll probably update it soon because I'm sure it's changed, but my plans as of right now is to transform the 416, which is currently a backup gun, into a dual creeping build. My SCAR, which is currently, it was a DMR, and I took it apart. Now it's just a bunch of pieces, but it's going to end up being a field 9-tooth DSG build. And the SR25 is going to be my designated marksman rifle. I'm excited about this build personally because I've never built myself a true DMR. This is because, it's not because I couldn't do it, it's because I never really needed that role, I guess, so I never needed to spend the money to buy a gun for a DMR. I built many for other people, but I was always more of a field player myself. When I first started, I had my SCAR, which was my field gun. Then I got the DSG, which it wasn't a DSG at the time, but the gun itself was my CQB gun. I got a 416 because I found it cheap online as a backup, and those are the 3 guns I kind of had for a long time. I branched out, I got some more, I ended up converting one to HPA, and I'm making one a DMR, just more even because I want to make personal DMR with all the internals than actually using it. So yeah, that's all I've really been doing lately. Let's see what Ryan is up to.
Ooh. I want to see your DMR. I want to see it completed.
Yeah,
I like good DMRs.
Actually, I had Charlie, who, if you guys don't know, he was on the podcast we previously shot. He's the one who cut my barrel and installed my patch for me because at the time I did not have, I still don't have proper equipment to really precisely cut a barrel for an ER hop. And then I figured, well, I have to ship him the stuff anyway because we live in different states, so I might as well let him do the hop himself while he has the barrel because I just didn't have time to do it. So I'm really hoping that it all pans out. It's fair for him if it does.
Yeah, recently I've been working on guns. I have 2 guns I'm working on primarily right now. I have a Lancer Tactical, the metal type, not the craptastic plastic. That is this tactical AK. I don't know what else to call it. It's one of those. It's like the Beta Project AK. That's what it is. It all came back to me. So it's pretty sweet. All the customer wanted me to do to it was do an arm hop to it, and this is a local customer, so he's a pretty cool guy. He just loves AK, so he has an AK, an SVD, an RPK, just all the Russian stuff. So it's a different mix in the bunch that I've been getting recently. The only problem is that the barrel in this thing, stock, came so scuffed up and beat up and dented on the inside that it has horrible accuracy. So I'm gonna probably try to polish it out, and if not, that doesn't work, I'll have to get a new barrel for it, and that'll have to be a thing. But he got it, and he complained about massive accuracy issues. So I was like, okay, so maybe the bucking is in sideways and it's dirty and all that stuff. I'll clean the barrel, fix the bucking, and if he wants to, I'll install an R-hop. So he wanted me to install an R-hop. I did all that stuff, And then I looked at the barrel, and it just looked like somebody had taken the inside of the barrel and just like threw gravel down it. So it just looked horrible. So that's a thing, working on that. The next gun I'm working on is a Classic Army Scar. It's the Sportline model, so it's all plastic and that kind of stuff, so, yay. But,
Scar for life.
it's actually really cool. The only problem is it came broken through Postal Service. Like, they broke the stock hinge. So...
I'm familiar with that.
So, yeah, go figure. That was a huge problem. But, then, I had to do a 35 RPS build of that. Linux A2 motor, 13-to-1 gears, 12-to-1, no, not 12-to-1, wow, SHS piston, Crytek MOSFET, believe it or not, and that's about it, so.
Wait, where did you get the Crytek MOSFET for that?
He just sent it to me, and I was like, okay.
Alright, where did he get it?
I don't know.
Did they sell them like as an OEM part, and you just order one? Or did you like pull it out of a Crytek and...
I don't know.
Why would you do that?
I honestly don't know. I can ask him and find out, but because I was kind of curious, just like, how did you get this? I didn't think you could just buy these separate.
Yeah.
Because when I got it, it was obviously taken off of a Crytek gearbox. I do know that much because it already had been like unsoldered. I could see it. So.
Oh, okay.
But it's actually a pretty good MOSFET. Works pretty great.
Yeah, as long as it works. I'm just like, I haven't heard of someone buying like the OEM part itself as like the MOSFET from them, so that was news to me.
Yeah, it's different. They're pretty cool though, I will say.
Did you heat shrink it up?
Not yet. That's a thing I really need to do. I don't have a heat shrink big enough, so I'm gonna have to order some.
Yeah.
I'm running low on heat shrink and wires anyway, so that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, that and electrical tape.
Yeah, I don't want to make it look horrible, so...
Yeah, I was doing customer batteries, and I wasn't paying attention to what I had at my desk, apparently, and I just ran out of heat shrink halfway through. Like, just completely gone. So I told him, I said, hey, I can finish these and just wrap them in electrical tape, or I can order heat shrink and just wait until more comes for you to finish batteries. And I ended up just wrapping them in electrical tape, but like, it does the same thing. As long as you wrap it tightly, it can actually be better than heat shrink because you know how heat shrink, if you don't apply it, like if you're putting it on a Dean's connector, for example, and then once you go to shrink it, if the entire circumference of the heat shrink wasn't like touching the Deans, there's a chance that it shrinks inward and then actually some of the connector is showing. With electrical tape, since you're applying it like by hand every time, you can make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's still just like, it's just easier to use heat shrink. It's what it's meant for.
And it looks a little more professional.
It does. It looks a lot better.
So that is a thing.
It is, especially in airsoft.
So also I want, before we move on, I'd like to say I will be doing something pretty cool here soon. I will be winding my own motors and building my own motor setups. So that's a recent thing I've been working on and planning. I'll be ordering the wire off of McMaster Car or MC Master Car, however you pronounce it. And yes, I'll be making 22 TPA motors. So I'm making 22 TPA motors because we already have a benchmark for that. If I can get my 22 TPA motors to perform better or like a JG Blue, then I've done something right. So
as long as you build a ZCI height fork that won't burn out 1/3 of the time, I'll buy them off you.
Good. But I need a benchmark, so I'm going with 22 TPA first, and that'll be my first run, a beta test model kind of thing. I'll test it out and see how well it runs, and etc. And if I can get it to burn out on like a basic setup, then I've done something wrong. So, but if I can get this run to work right, then I'm going to start making 18 TPA motors, which would have a massively high demand. So,
yes, I would buy those off you as well.
I think people would run like that with 10-to-1 like DSG gears. That'd be ridiculous.
That's actually a build I was looking into a while back. So when I was like, because what I'm doing with my SCAR, my current DSG, is I'm buying bits and pieces from both and mixing them together to make more ideal setups. The things I wanted to do was throw an 18 TPA motor into my 10-to-1 DSG gear set I already have.
Mm-hmm.
However, there isn't a reliable 18 TPA motor. The Core made one for a while, and there was a lot of problems with it, so they stopped stocking them. And unless you get one like wound yourself, I don't really think there's even a legitimate 18 TPA, unless maybe one of like the Teenley motors where they measure by RPMs, not TPA, might end up being like around 17, 18 or something like that. But I haven't really been able to spot like a reliable one.
Yeah, I've found the core ones. I think Bolt makes 18 TPA motors as well, or 17 or 19, something weird. But those are also not that great, so that's a thing.
Yeah.
But these motors will probably be priced around the price range of $60 to $70 a piece. But they'll have the same, like, expect the same warranty that you get out of Black Talon Concepts, like, you know, the 3-year warranty kind of concept where if it breaks down, I'm gonna repair it for you. It'll, like, the specs I've got so far for it will be the can will be a ZCI can. The arm will probably be a Kioli arm that I've you know, self-wound. So that just the arm itself will be Kioli. The wire will be, you know, wire I've bought, and then I'll be balancing it. I will also be like, I'll be balancing it by drilling holes in the armature and not, you know, stacking epoxy on it. So that will be much better. I'll be shimming the armature, shimming the magnets, and then putting an SHS pinion or a ZCI pinion of choice for the customer. And because some people like SHS, some people like ZCI, and locking it down, and so that'll work. And I'm gonna be polishing the comm and all that stuff. And yeah, it's gonna be a really well built motor, and it's supposed to be able to run like 14/8 and 11.1 volts just fine on super high stress setups. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, so I mean, just thinking of your idea, let's say you end up pricing it around $60. So let's assume you go through, you do all the mods, you get it working the way you want to, and after maybe 2 or 3 batches, you get it to the point where they're not failing and they're working like amazingly well. What you can also do is just think about it this way. A Lonex motor is what, $50 to $55, then plus shipping depending on where you find them. If Ryan's selling this motor for maybe $60, and it's basically the exact same thing, except, I mean, Lonex motors recently have been having some really weird QC issues. And if Ryan maybe second or third batch of motors, you can guarantee there's no QC issues, and if there is, you contact him for a warranty as opposed to contacting Brill, who, I mean, he's been known to do some pretty generous things, but I doubt he's just gonna like off and on replace a $55, $60 motor.
Yeah.
Because it was a problem with the company. It's not a problem on his end. So, I mean, like, that's not even, like, just right when you said it, I'm just thinking 67. Yeah, at first it sounded kind of high, but then when you think about it, it's really not. It's like $5 more than a Lonex, and you have to pay shipping on the Lonex anyway, and you're getting a better warranty.
It's like the BTC equivalent of a motor. It's gonna have the same warranty, the same, you know, general build quality as far as construction and like overall quality is concerned. So I'm just trying to make a fantastic product because we have great gearbox shells, great MOSFETs, great gears, great pistons, awesome barrels and hop-up units, but we don't have great motors. So we really, because like motors take a lot of stress. I mean, you can build a gun to cycle an 18-volt lipo, but because the thing you're dumping all that, you know, energy into can't take it, your gearbox isn't going to run. So you need a reliable motor to run setups like that. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it to where we can not necessarily jump into the next like technical stage of airsoft, but we can kind of do what we've been wanting to do for a long time, which is like run 70 RPS DSG builds reliably without the motor burning out or some stupid thing like that, you know?
Yeah. Perfect what we already have for now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get brushless motors sometime, but that's going to be a later option.
I think TM introduced a brushless motor into one of the newer guns they were producing. However, I don't know what the gun was. So, for example, if it wasn't an M4, it probably had a thicker body where they could just kind of throw it into with a custom motor cage.
Yeah.
But I did definitely read somewhere a while back that TM was introducing the idea of a brushless motor in one of their new releases. But I completely forget what gun it was.
I saw a picture of it, but I have no idea, so...
Yeah.
Alright, so after us just rambling on about our recent activities, we're going to drop right into the review of the week. So this time, like last week, we are reviewing a brand and not necessarily just a product. So this week we are reviewing Modify. Okay,
what do you want to start with?
There's so much we could talk about with Modify because they make so many products and they do a lot of it horribly.
Some of it's pretty good, which makes it hard to just like crap on the brand entirely, but some of it is subpar.
Okay, so let's just talk about the brand itself, because the brand itself, the company, the name, is a really bad company. They take credit for a lot of stuff that they did not do.
One of the most obvious or notorious ones recently is so before SHS did, they completely just copied Riot's Siege Tech dual sector gear, and they completely ripped it off. They made a worse version. Ironically, the weight reduction design they used, Riot ended up using later in his own gears, which I found kind of funny. However, the gear quality that they were making was entirely trash. And I think originally in the description of their own product, they linked Riot's installation manual for his DSG, which is just like a slap in the face, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a major company doing this to a single guy who had a great idea and started making his own stuff. It's just like kind of the low point for them in my recent memory.
Yeah, I really don't like Modify because they copied the DSG setup, which, I mean, okay, so I'm perfectly fine with, I'm a person who doesn't like intellectual property rights. That's just like one of my opinions. So I think legally what they're doing, in my opinion, should be right. But morally, it's wrong because what they're doing is they're taking credit for something they didn't do. So I'm like, that's not right, but like at the same time, nobody should sit around and like sue you for it. So, of course, the AirsoftTech community reacts and they're like, well, we're not going to buy your modified DSG for 2 reasons. It's not the real DSG, and it's a piece of junk. So that's like the 2 reasons. They've also...
just the fact that like they didn't even go through the trouble of making their own manual. I know initially, I'm pretty sure that they just linked Riot's own manual for his DSG as the manual for their DSG. It's just kind of like the shoving the middle finger to his face, like, yeah, we did just literally copy you, and we're going to even use your own words to describe our product. Yeah. That was kind of the part that I was like, all right, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not even going to test this just to see how bad or how good it is. I'm not even going to buy it.
Like, if I get one for free, I'll probably break it. But other than that...
I'll make one of those keychains out of it.
Yeah, I honestly want to do that. That just sounds fun. But like break it, like just totally strip the DSG sector part of it, and then just wear it as like a keychain from now on.
Yeah,
I'll do that. But a lot of other things Modify makes, like, okay, so personally, I think Modify is that company that has a lot of money because they're related to Echo One and all this stuff. And if I remember correctly, either Echo One and Modify are like owned by the same company, or like one of them owns the other, because they have a lot of money for marketing. So what happens a lot when Modify comes out with a new product, like when they first came out with their gears that came like in a cage, and you
they were all connected together, and they weren't even shimmed right in the connection.
Yeah, and then you just drop that in your gearbox, and that's supposed to run perfectly. Well, Airsoft GI, E-Vike, and all these other big airsoft companies are like, yeah, this product's amazing because you don't have to shim it anymore. Well, that doesn't make any sense because the shimming is based on the gearbox shell, not the gears. So, like, there's so many problems there.
It was a great idea in the sense that it's like a pre-shimmed gear set, so you can't, assuming they shimmed it right, which they didn't, but let's all assume they did, because that's what the product should have been for their market, is that if they're all shimmed correctly, there's no way to mess up the shimming, because they're locked in, they're all together. However, the 2 big flaws with this is that every gearbox shell you fit it in, it's gonna fit in there a little differently, and this will throw off motor height, which, if all the gears are locked in, you can't shim for motor height, which is what you're supposed to start shimming with, is the motor height. So the big flaw in the whole product is that, yeah, they all come shimmed to each other, and they weren't supposed to be able to move, but even when they made it, they still had a lot of play in them, which they shouldn't have. But inherently in the design, you can't even like possibly shim it to your motor unless it just happened to be shimmed perfectly, because it was one of those odd combinations that just worked. So in advertising a pre-shimmed gear set, it ruined shimming because you can't shim it to your motor, which is the most important step.
Yeah. So like take this as an example. Say you have a gearbox shell, a JG gearbox shell, and you take this Modify setup and you put it in the shell, and you try to close it, and it doesn't fit, because Modify made that setup slightly wider than the JG gearbox shell, which are super tight.
JGs are super tight,
yeah,
so
can
it's like
accept.
a common thing that could have happened.
So somebody just sat around and they were like, watched this Airsoft GI video and saw this, like, oh, this is awesome. I can bump up my rate of fire. I don't have to shim it. I can just drop it right in. It's gonna be easy. So he spends like $100+ on this whole setup, drops it in, and it won't close. So
I mean, now he's out because you can't take them apart. You can't change them. You have to either buy a new gearbox shell and hope that it fits all your other pieces and your gun, and then on top of that, like Ryan said, the people buying this are probably the people that like couldn't shim in the first place, which is the only reason why you would buy it. So there's a really low chance they know how to properly fit all the parts, or if there is a fitment issue, how to fix it. So now they're out even more money.
Exactly. So it's just a big perpetual circle. You're just constantly going around and around and around, spending money trying to solve your problem. Now, I'm not saying that's Modify's fault for the customer buying it, because it's not. They could have done more research. They didn't have to buy it. But Modify pays these companies to say great things about their products when, in all honesty, you can just look at the thing and be like, that is completely flawed. Because I remember watching that video when I was like 13, and I was like, this isn't going to work. I'm 13, and I know this. So, yeah. I really, like, when I saw that, I called BS on that, like, as soon as I saw it, and, that's just, like, the surface of Modify's things. They also have a lot of other things that are, not so great. But let's actually skip some other things that aren't so great and quit talking trash about the company, and actually talk about some products that they make that are good. I'm pretty sure...
I have one off the top of my head, but you might...
Yeah, Ryan probably knows where I'm going with this, and I'm talking about their bearings.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, Modify makes a set of bearings called the Modify 8mm ceramic bearings. And if you're not familiar with what bearings are, they're basically bushings that are within themselves that rotate with little balls, which are called ball bearings. They have races, and so the two sections, when your gears spin, rotate on each other. So it helps to relieve stress, makes the system quieter, and it helps you to keep, efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really cool idea, and bearings have been a mechanical concept for a long, long time now, and they're used in cars and all kinds of stuff. But the problem in airsoft is that our bearings are A, too tiny, and B, horribly made. So they always break on the most basic of setups. So we try to find good bearings, which there are only 3: GMP, Modify, and Magic Box. So those are our 3 best bearings, and Modify bearings, or ceramic bearings, are probably the second best. So they're great.
The fun little fact too is that BB stands for ball bearing.
Yeah.
So when you're shooting your airsoft guns, you're shooting ball bearings at each other. Just again, if you need another picture on what it really is. And aside, so I know, just adding on what Ryan said, the Modify ceramics were the staple in the teching world for a while as the only bearings to use reliably. GMP bearings were also pretty stable. They're up there. The Magic Box bearings came out not as long ago as the previous 2. However, they're also very good. They're very strong. And like Ryan said, the problem isn't necessarily that the bearings in the airsoft community, or industry, I'll call it, it's not that they don't work. It's that they're just made either with QC issues, or they're made with too thin or too weak material. So when you put them past maybe a basic setup, they just break and they fail. And that's why when you say, like, if you're going to buy bearings, people will just say, don't buy bearings, make it easier. Or they'll say, if you're going to, buy Modify ceramics. Or they'll say, buy one of these 3, and they'll list Modify ceramics, GMP, and Magic Box. And aside from the ceramic bearings, Modify actually also makes a lot of decent air nozzles. And I know there's a lot more companies that make them now, but there didn't used to be. So for your odd-end guns, like a VFC Scar H, or a Classic Army Scar L, or an ANK ACR, for a really long time, Modify was the only brand that made decent quality O-ring air nozzles for those guns.
Yeah.
And so for a while, they kind of ruled the air nozzle market until more companies like Core started to expand in there. WeTech didn't make a lot, and that's WII Tech, not WE Tech. They didn't make a lot, but they made them for the niche guns that didn't have products already out there, and things like that. But, I mean, for a long time, they kind of owned that market too. And I actually have a Modify air nozzle in my personal Scar L as well, because that was the only one on the market at the time. There were no others.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's how that works. Modify has been around for a long, long time. Basically, the companies that have, like, old... And I'm not talking like old airsoft, I'm talking like,
kind of like the mid stages of airsoft. I'd say like the starting ages of airsoft, where AEGs were just starting to be a thing and upgrade parts were around. There were very few upgrade brands, and then like middle, you have Modify, Sistema, Prometheus, and Deep Fire, and a couple other small brands that made parts.
Deep Fire is kind of like crawled away in a corner.
Oh yeah, and Kansan, that was another good company that made bearings. But okay, Kansan bearings aren't great, but they're pretty good. They were on the right track. They just really have bad QC issues. So Kansan was another old one. But yeah, back in the time, all you had was like Deep Fire, Modify, maybe Sistema, Kansan, and all that those companies. And so you had to work with them. Nowadays, we have like 30 different companies that are making upgrade parts, and then like 10 of them that are copying off of each other and just like rebranding. So that's a thing. But we just have so many companies now, and Modify's been around for a long time, and so they've kind of earned their stay here because they've been around so long, and they're going to be hard to fight off because a lot of their parts are not that great, but some are pretty good.
Another thing they do though, I know that's what Ryan said, is that they do make a lot of crappy parts. They do make a couple good parts. The one thing they do really, really well is they actually innovate. As far as internal parts go, there's a good chance if a company is making a new design or like a new concept for something, probably 70% chance it was Modify that came up with the idea, even though a lot of the times they copy other companies like they did with Riot. Other times they're innovators, like they did with their connected gears, for example, or their air nozzles, which wasn't really an innovation, but like no one made aftermarket air nozzles for Classic Army Scar Ls. Modify decided to make and market them. No one made them for NKACRs. Modify decided to make and market them. So that is something else that they do well, is that they're not afraid to make the product that's missing or that's not there, or to try and fit a new product in, on top of all the other stuff that they also do.
Yeah.
It's probably a good way to close this. The next topic we were going to talk about is our debate, and we were going to discuss VFC versus GMP, because for a long time, as far as I can remember, these companies have kind of been back and forth competing on both externals and internals as which one is the real upper tier gun to get if I'm going to splurge the money on it. So I know I own a lot more GMP products than I do VFC products. However, I also think VFC is better in some ways than GMP, so this will be an interesting debate to have. Where did you want to start, Ryan?
Do you want to go, or do you want me to go first?
I can go, but do you want us to argue certain sides, or just say what we know? Because I have mixed opinions on both.
I'm actually kind of siding with GMP on this one, so...
Okay, I will try to fight more VFC then.
Alright.
So I do know, for VFC, quality-wise, both guns are roughly the same external build quality. I would have to give it to VFC, though, having held both rifles. I own a GMP receiver set. I own a lot of GMP externals. I love them all, don't get me wrong. I have almost no complaints about them. However, something about the VFC just feels a little bit more solid, a little bit nicer. I also like how the VFCs come with the working bolt catch, because if you're going to be spending this much money on a really nice quality rifle, you might as well try and get as realistic as you can get. And it doesn't hurt. I personally think bolt catches are really cool if they're functioning. It's just another aesthetic. It's not going to harm something if it doesn't have it, but when I'm shelling out so much money for this top tier gun, I just wanted to have everything it can possibly have. VFC also has TM spec threading on their upper receiver. Now, I'm not sure if the newer GMPs have TM spec on the AEGs, but I know the older ones had WA gas blowback rifle spec on both the gas blowback rifles and the AEGs, which is why if you've ever tried to put a normal, I'll call it, rail on a GMP upper receiver, it wouldn't fit, and you would actually break the receiver threads if you try to torque it on, because they were just made to a different size.
Yeah, I will say, I have a GMP receiver, and it is a pain in the butt to put anything on that thing. So,
yeah,
just to drop
I know on my GMP receiver that I bought aftermarket, I made sure that I also bought a GMP rail, because I knew that if I bought a normal rail, it would not have fit. Or I would have had to torque it on and risk cross-threading something or ruining the threads on it, and then having a worthless $50 upper receiver. Then, so that's external-wise. And externals for the VFC. For the M4s, at least, the buffer tube, they do a different buffer tube attachment where they don't have the classic screw and nut that go through the buffer tube and go into the spring guide. They actually have a buffer tube that twists onto the rear receiver. And I like this for two ways. One, it gives you the option to still put in the nut and bolt like normal if you want to, if you want that extra stabilization of the spring guide, if you just want to have another thing that makes you feel safer, the buffer tube staying on. But two, specifically, one, it makes the gun more realistic and easier to take down. But also, if you happen to get a split gearbox, for example, like one of the Pro Wins, the Cradles, the Retro Arms ones, hoping they cut back on the issues they have there, which there aren't a lot, but there are some. It would be much, much easier to use those gearboxes to the full advantage without having to take your stock off, grab a giant screw, throw it into the buffer tube, and unscrew the screw there to then be able to take your split gearbox out of your upper like you normally would just be able to with, for example, an ICS or a JG that flip up. So even though the VFC doesn't flip up like a real AR-15, it does allow you to still take the upper and the lower apart because of the buffer tube. So that's it. External-wise, I do have to give it to VFC. I mean, quality, I think they're roughly the same, but I just think the VFC comes with extra features that are more to my appeal, and that's coming from someone who owns a GMP receiver, and I love it, but I gotta give it a VFC on that one. Internal-wise, again, they're very similar. So I know VFC uses 16-to-1 gears instead of 18-to-1 gears, which I like. That doesn't make a huge performance difference, but in a stock gun, at the motor and spring setup they have, it's not putting any more stress on the motor, so there's really no reason not to run those gears. I commend them for that. VFC shells I really like. I also like GMP. I actually like GMP a little more, so if I have to, comparing the shell itself, I have to give it to that, but the VFC ones are still pretty nice. VFC motors, the motor itself, I don't mind. It's a decent motor if you want to save the arm and put it in a Neocan. I believe it's 16 TPA, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
I've heard it's floating anywhere between 16 and like 20 TPA.
Yeah, that's,
so.
I had 16 and 18 were the two numbers I had in my head, so it's probably between 16 and 20, somewhere in there. It is a nice motor. If you have a Neocan, you want to throw it in, it'll perform very nicely. Aside from that, though, I do have to knock them on the self-shimming gears. It works for the stock setup, but I'm not a fan of it personally. It makes it more annoying to shim afterward because spacers that are normally on the gears are not there, so it takes like a million more shims. And also, I'm just like, it's a cool concept where the gears will push back on the springs to fit properly, and the springs will keep the gears in line so they don't push back too much, but it doesn't really work perfectly. The gears move around a little bit, and the vibrations of the gearbox shake them back and forth, so for a stock setup, it's probably really not going to affect too much, if anything. However, it's still just good not to have something that could go wrong in a gearbox. However, with this being... Oh, and also, VFC pistons, I hate them. They're shit. There's no other way. They strip really, really easily. They're really bad. There's no reason to have that piston in a gun. It's just terrible. But what I was going to go to is VFC is actually introducing a new version 2 gearbox for the version 2 guns. It has been implemented in the higher-end special edition 416s already. I think it's going in the special edition... Not the special edition, just like the higher-end Platinum series. I think it might be going in the Echo 1 series that they just rebrand VFCs and put their trades on it.
The Platinum series.
I just said that. I was getting names mixed up. The E series is what I meant.
Oh,
I meant
the
to
E
say
series.
VFC E series, and then I meant to say Echo 1 Platinum. I mixed the two up. But if they are going into these new guns, these new gearboxes were shown off to have a stock MOSFET, a full steel-racked piston, same 16-to-1 gears, same compression parts, which I didn't really have a problem with, same shell. I think they were supposed to have bearings, which I'm not a fan of, but I mean, I think it's not. If that's the only complaint in the gearbox, I'm happy to get it. And then I don't remember how the shimming was supposed to be. I would assume it's VFC that they're keeping the self-shimming feature, which again I'm not a fan of, but I don't know. If they do end up scrapping it, that's just one less thing that's wrong. So I would actually be all for these new gearboxes and buying a VFC in that sense if they do end up coming out. So I'll let Ryan talk about GMP now.
This is because both the guns are really good. Both of them have good setups.
Yeah, definitely.
Externally, like as far as like everything is concerned, I'd say VFC has the upper hand. I'm just gonna like cut to it because Ryan explained all the other stuff, and so if I explained that, I'd be just repeating him, and that'd kind of be boring because it's already been said. So yeah, I think VFC does have the upper hand externally. It has more features, so if that's what you're looking for, that's what you get. However, I like GMP more because the receivers are more slim, because they're built to a different spec, and so like they have like a slimmer feel to them. They're very lightweight, but that's like VFC too, so that's just another thing I'm throwing in. I like just how the GMP gun feels. I don't know why. I've held a lot of VFC guns, and they all feel like, to me, they're just not as aesthetically appealing. But so that's why I like GMP. I think GMP has slightly better externals as far as just like aesthetically appealing to me. Whenever I pick up a GMP gun, it just feels really good externally. But whenever I pick up a VFC gun, it doesn't feel quite as good. But sure, it's really good. And this, like, I held the VFC N27 IAR. I worked on that gun for a long time. This was like the limited edition production model, like M27, and it just felt awesome. But I still prefer the GMP feel. So that's just me, though. I like the trades on GMP a lot. I like all that stuff. It's just really cool. Internally, if you're comparing the new VFC gearbox versus the new setup for GMP, I still prefer GMP a little more. Mainly because I like. Okay, I'll start from the shell and work my way in. I like the shell more than VFC's. It just feels a little thicker. It just feels better in my opinion. Just tougher and it's not as thin. And that's kind of my thing with it. The VFC shell, while tough, just feels thinner and weird. I don't know how to describe it, but I don't like it as well as the GMP shell. Granted, I've never broken either one, so I don't really know like which one's fully better because I've never broken one. But I prefer the GMP one over the VFC one. Gears, VFC is much better. GMP gears are really bad. The teeth and like the body is machined well, and not machined, but cast well. But the axles are awful. Like they're horrible. They always break. Even on basic setups, the axles will just snap, and so that you can't have that. VFC gears, I say, are better only because they're stronger. I hate self-shimming, but they're stronger still, so I give it to them. Bushings and bearings, I prefer the GMP bearings. They're really cool. They're like the third best bearings on the market. They last in a lot of setups.
They are nice. I use those. I use Modify Ceramics in my DSG build, and I use GMP in my 416 build. Those are the only two that I actually use.
Yeah, they're really, really cool. I like them. Granted, bushings are better all around because they're just tougher, but bushings are such a common thing. You can buy bushings for $3, $3 or $5, but you can't buy GMP bearings for under
Be different. Come on.
What?
Make it interesting.
You can't buy GMP bearings for under like $15. So that's why it already comes with them. They're really cool. That's just awesome. Next thing, wire. Wire on the GMP guns is just way thicker, way nicer, way better. VFC just has really thin, crappy wire.
GMP also stock wires Deans on their guns now, which I am all for.
Yes, I like that a lot. Trigger switch, I like the VFC one better. It's tougher. It doesn't crap out on you as quick. Anti-reversal latch, they're the same thing. They're not really going to break. Cutoff lever, they're about the same. Piston, GMP is better, I think. VFC craptastic plastic is awful, but their new pistons look sweet. So if those new pistons look as good as they perform, then they're better than the GMP ones by far. Tappet plates, they're about the same. Cylinders about the same. Cylinder head's about the same. Piston head about the same. GMPs are plastic. VFCs are metal. Spring guide, normally VFC comes with a ball bearing. A lot of VFCs don't. I'm sorry. VFC comes with the ball bearing. A lot of GMPs don't. So that's kind of a disappointing fact. But that's a thing. Springs are both about the same spring, no problem there. Motor, I think the GMP has a hand up on the motor because it's the M120 motor, and the M120 armature is beautiful. The can with the magnets suck, but you just drop neodymium magnets in it and you got an awesome motor. So yeah, hop-up units, GMP is better because it's metal. It's just like the VFC one's a horrible plastic. The bucking for GMPs, they're about the same as VFC. I wouldn't really say one's superior than the other because they're both stock, the same pretty much. Barrels, I think GMP comes with like a 608, and VFC comes with like a 603 now. I can't remember, but I think VFC barrels are better. I've never really compared the two of them, but from what everybody said, I'd say VFC barrels are better. So,
I can't remember if the difference is in the stock barrels right now.
I prefer GMP. That's my final set with that. Just because it comes with more of what I want, and so that's why I like it. Now, a lot of people say that the externals are the same or VFCs are better, so they'll just automatically like those. But I personally prefer the aesthetics on the GMP.
Now I know. I just bought for my DSG externally a GMP receiver set, a GMP rail, a GMP pistol grip, and the only thing I think on the gun in the main externals that isn't GMP is an A&K buffer tube that I'm just reusing. And I do have to say, I really, even though I didn't buy this as a GMP gun, I made it myself. I really do really love the look and feel of all these externals together.
Yeah.
They just look so nice together, lock into place, because it was actually a little lower than it was supposed to be. So this could have just been the receiver I bought, or the style I bought, because I bought the more aggressive upper receiver instead of the standard GMP upper receiver. So it could be an issue with that. I mean, I don't care, because I play with the dust cover down anyway. However, just something I noticed where it was meant to lock, because it did lock before I put the pin in, and then when you actually put everything together, it was no longer able to lock due to a spacing issue. But other than that, and then internal-wise, I do, if I had to pick a brand, if I had to use the stock gearbox, I would probably pick GMP. However, there are faults in both of them, and there are things that each one does well. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to buy this gun, at this point you're really paying for the externals. Like, both of the guns are better than like your JG or your D-Boys as far as internals go, but they're still not perfect. There's still things you need to do to both if you want it to run well or run reliably. So when you're paying this much money, you're really just paying for the externals, and then paying a tech later on when it breaks to fix up the internals for you. Performance-wise, they both perform almost identically stock as well. So again, you're really paying for those externals. If the GMP externals appeal better to you, and they feel sturdier to you, buy the GMP externals. If you'd rather get the more features out of the gun, and you'd rather have simpler TM compatibility with external customization later on, grab a VFC. The internal differences, they're there, but in my opinion, they're so minute that it's really just, like, you're going to have to fix stuff in either gun, no matter which one you pick. Even if it's different stuff, you're going to have to fix it. So if you're still going to have to get it worked on eventually, you might as well buy something that you're willing to keep for a long time if you're spending that much money on it.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, most likely that would be a VFC. However, I would definitely still spend money on a GMP. It's not like I hate the brand. I love them. But having owned a GMP now, I'd probably rather buy a VFC to just have one of each, I guess. That'd probably be the way I ended up on it. And what were we talking about next, Ryan?
Next topic is our Q&A.
Oh yeah, so I think you want to start with this one.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we just answer some questions that we get on a daily basis. Not necessarily ones that somebody asked us for the show particularly, but which we are open to. But questions that we get all the time. As techs, you get asked questions, whether in the field or on forums. You are the sole, embodiment of information when somebody asks you a question, so they expect an answer. So, questions I've been getting recently. Best lipos. Now, there are a lot of different brands of lipos. If you've been to Hobby King, you'll know this. So, the go-to brand for a lot of people is Turnigy, which it's not a bad brand. It's not that bad. But their lipos, they're kinda on the cheaper side. Both, you buy them, they're cheap, and so you get them, and they're kind of cheap. And so Turnigy has actually two types of batteries. They're nanotech and they're regular lipo batteries. Both are lipo, but the nanotech are smaller, more powerful, all that stuff. And the regular lipos are just regular lipos. Well, their nanotech ones puff up a lot. So, you don't get all the usage that you should get out of them. So that kind of leaves you, short-handed almost. So that's with Turnigy. So a lot of people ask me questions. So what's the best lipo battery? There's tons of them out there. Turnigy used to be the go-to. What is now? So there are two brands that a lot of techs use that maybe not like every tech uses, but brands that I would say are really good. The first one, I've heard a lot of good things about Glacier lipos. I'm pretty sure that's the name of them. I can't remember for the life of me if that's 100% right. But I've heard really, really good things about Glacier lipos from the RC community. And so I've also heard a lot of good things about Sky lipos from not just the Airsoft community, but the Airsoft community. So the hobby community and the Airsoft...
RC and Airsoft.
Yeah, the RC and Airsoft community have said good things about Sky lipos as well, which, if you know who Valley River Arms is on YouTube and Instagram, he has a Sky lipo for his DSG, and he loves it. And so everything I've read about Sky says they're good. Same thing with Glacier. I haven't heard very many complaints about Glacier either. But a lot of Turnigy nanotech lipos just puff up unexpectedly. So it's really irritating when you're like me and you buy a $45 lipo battery, which is a huge lipo that can run like any setup and all this stuff, and it puffs up in a month. And so it's really, really frustrating. So Turnigy, not a bad brand, they're just not doing so great with their products. And just so you guys know, this is only in their nanotech series that I've had this issue with. So there are other lipo batteries which I have that they're non-nanotech lipos are still running fine, and they're older than my nanotech batteries. So Sky lipos, Glacier lipos, and I've even heard good things about Rhino, even though I don't have much experience at all there. So that's just my bits of advice.
Yeah, and just adding on to what Ryan said, one common thing that I think a lot of the techs overlook because we just do this naturally is don't buy your lipos from airsoft retailers, because all it is another cheap China company's lipo with a different label on it being sold at a much higher price, and sometimes pre-wired to Deans, and they jack up the price on them. No, they're not made for airsoft guns exclusively. No, they're not better for your gun in any way. They're literally just regular batteries. There's no difference. They're all lithium polymer batteries, 1-cell, 2-cell, 3-cell, and the specs on them between C-dump rating and milliamps. And they're usually weaker batteries as well. They're smaller and they have a lower C-dump, which is not good if you're building a high-stress setup or if you're trying to tech on a gun and not just throw a lipo in a stock gun. As far as now where to go, Hobby King is the first place I always go. There's a lot of other hobby-oriented stores that will sell lipo batteries. Hobby King is the easiest and simplest, and in my experience, they have the largest inventory. And they also have a U.S. warehouse. They have 2 U.S. warehouses now. So you can usually not have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get your batteries anymore. You can get them in probably 1 to 2 being on the more generous side. Also, with brands, now you go to Hobby King, and on Hobby King, the only brand marketed for airsofters, or that has a lot of sizes that will fit in most airsoft guns, is the Turnigy Nanotechs. And of course, that's the brand that has issues. So even though you're skipping out on the airsoft retailer trick and you found the glorious heaven of lipo batteries, there's still some more work you have to do, because not everything on there is high quality. With any store, there's the weaker stuff and the better stuff. What Ryan said about Turnigy Nanotechs, 100% agree. I mirror that experience. I personally owned two 7.4 volt nanotechs, two 11.1 volt nanotech, actually three 11.1 volt nanotechs, and one 14.8 volt nanotech. And the reason why I've had so many is, one, they give a lot of power and a lot of milliamps for a lot cheaper than the same performance of the same battery in a different company. Two, for a long time, the fact that they puffed, and on the RC community, it's commonly they're called the Turnigy Nano Puffs. That fact wasn't really about. They're a fairly new battery design and a fairly new sub-brand of Turnigy, where when they first came out, there was a lot of hype about them because the Turnigy batteries at the time were decent quality batteries for a really low price, and a lot of people bought them because they were cheap and they worked well. So now these Turnigy Nanotechs, they're supposed to be the Turnigy batteries, but higher performance levels, smaller, and they weighed less. And those three things are a perfect combination in the RC world. If you've ever done trucks, planes, or cars, that's what you want. Or boats even. You want a higher power output, more milliamps, smaller and lighter package. It can't get better than that. So there's a lot of hype. Everyone bought them. Everyone praised them. And it took people a while of owning them to realize that they didn't just have a fluke battery or mess up charging them. It was common that these puffed up and these got ruined fairly quickly. And out of all the nanotechs I've owned, which is probably like 6 or 7, every single one except for one has had the puffing issue prematurely. I will have to be replacing the batteries even still that are going through the cycle now of breaking on me. And the batteries I started buying are Genzace, which I absolutely love. I've had no complaints with them. I have a 7.4 brick as well as a 11.1 stick, and neither of them have given me any troubles whatsoever so far. They weren't even that much more expensive than the Turnigy Nanotechs. They were probably the same performance, same size, much, much, much higher quality. I think I bought them on hobbyparts.com. I don't remember exactly. But those I've had great luck with those. So that's the other brand I can personally speak for. And then my question that I'm bringing to today's podcast is something I get all the time, not even as a tech, just as like a general question that I see, and I happen to know the answer, so I will chime in on it, is people looking to either get into airsoft or to specifically get into teching, and they want to know what's the best budget gun to buy for their situation. So I'll concern people getting into airsoft first. If you're just getting into the sport and you want to know what is a decent gun that will last you a while without spending too much or having to know too much on maintenance or how to upgrade or fix problems that occur, I actually would have to say it's probably the G&G Combat Machine. And I hate that gun with a passion. I really, really hate that gun. However, it does its job. I mean, it's lightweight, it's made externally to not break, and internally, for the price, it comes extremely well tuned compared to the other guns in the price bracket. Its downsides, the parts are inherently weak. So again, this is the gun where if you're just getting into the sport and you want one that is low maintenance, you really don't need to know how to fix it. And if it does break, you're not out $300 and discouraged from playing. You're out maybe $175, and they're cheap to fix. The other thing, the bad side of G&G Combat Machines is that if you end up liking the sport and want to upgrade your gun or change your gun, they're a lot of work. And when I mean a lot of work, it's not necessarily too difficult, but depending on how much better you want to make your gun, you have to replace almost every single piece on the inside of it to get really nice performance out of it. And that's why I'm going to transition over to the build guns now. If you're looking to buy a cheap gun specifically because you want to tech on it and you want to build it into something really nice on the inside, G&G Combat Machine is probably the last gun I would ever recommend. The internal parts, while they are tuned very well, which means they will work well on a stock setup, they are extremely poorly designed and very weak. The motor has the highest burnout rate of any motor I've personally experienced. The wiring is extremely thin, and I don't just mean the coating, which if you have a thin coating, thick wiring, that's a good thing in airsoft because you can cram it into shells. I mean, it has a normal coating, just a really really thin wire for a normal stock AEG. The piston is trash. It strips really easily. The piston head is just made wrong. I don't know why, but they always have air leaks. It's almost like they made the ridges that hold the piston head O-ring in place actually too small, so air just leaks right by it.
They did.
Yeah, so
that's exactly
the issue
what happened.
With those. The cylinder heads are nothing special. The cylinders are really, really thin. I think they're aluminum, which it's just not a good material. The stock brass ones in every other clone AEG is a better material than the thin aluminum. The barrels are also thin aluminum, which vibrate a lot and wear down quickly, so they just break easier. The hop-up is plastic, but it's a stock gun. You can't complain about every little detail. They're going to be plastic. The spring guide, unless they change it, is just really, really bad. The bushings went through a ton of different materials. At first they were nylon. So they had a lot of anti-friction, which was good, but they wore down extremely easily. Then they went to what I think was brass. And again, it's like, oh yeah, we don't have nylon bushings anymore, but we chose one of the weakest possible metals to now make it out of. So it had the same problem. And they really haven't addressed these problems. And they've been putting out new combat machine models and changing up the externals, but they haven't really been addressing these problems that are apparent in them. Now, just the brands that I would suggest for a budget build, JG. It's not perfect, but they're basically what it comes with. It comes pretty poorly tuned. However, the parts, the individual pieces themselves, are extremely durable and extremely strong. So as long as you can learn how to tune them, which is techie anyway, so if you're buying a base gun, this is going to be one of the things you're doing, they will last you a very, very long time. The only complaint out of any piece in a JG gearbox that I personally have is the new carrot pistons are relatively weak compared to the old cream pistons. I don't know why they made that change. However, even the new carrots, they're still pretty decent for a stock gun. Another really good one is D-Boys. D-Boys is a similar situation as JG. They come with a lot of very strong internal parts, stock. Again, they're not tuned very well at all. They're actually tuned pretty poorly. However, if you're teching on it, you're going to tune it yourself. So all you need are the strong parts themselves that, when tuned properly, won't break on you. And that's something that the combat machine cannot give you. Again, going back to JG, you also have the chance to pick up a JG Blue motor if you buy one of the enhanced models of the gun, which is a very, very high-end motor, and it just racks off another $30 to $60 of an upgrade part you will have to end up buying if you were to buy any other stock gun. So that's my take on it. D-Boys and JG are my two favorites for like really, really cheap, really durable build guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for just getting a good performance, like if you just want a gun that performs well, and you want a gun that you can upgrade, I honestly think Echo One's a really good brand for guns. I know I talk a lot of trash about Echo One, but that's primarily where they say things about their guns that aren't true, or when they overhype like their upgrade parts, stuff like that. So this isn't the case.
Oh, the Echo One GAT.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I like a lot of Echo One guns, honestly. A lot of them are not necessarily straight up rebrands of JG, SEMA, and D-Boys. They're like taking the gun, doing a little bit to it to make it a little bit better, and then selling it up for a higher price. If you're buying a gun and you just want it to last for a while and perform well without doing any work to it, but then later on want to do work to it, I'd say Echo One is a good brand. I had their P90, the Echo One P90 or the Echo One E90 for a really, really long time. Kept it stock for like 2 years, and then finally upgraded it, and it still performed awesome. So that was a fantastic choice. I still love that gun. I just wish I could get it, up to performance level again. I've just been so busy. But a lot of Echo One guns are cool, unique, well built, and you can always upgrade them later on. So that's my thing. I really like Echo One. So I side a little bit differently.
Too, and where I completely agree. Because basically what Echo One does is they will order the parts that go into their guns from the same factories that JG, D-Boys, and SEMA. And SEMA's another one that I forgot to mention. Basically, same exact story as JG and D-Boys. Decently strong quality parts, not put together the best. However, if you're teching it, you can do that yourself. So all you need is to strengthen the parts. And what Echo One does is they order the parts from those same factories. So basically, if you're buying an Echo One, depending on the model, you're really just buying a JG, D-Boys, or SEMA gun that they decided to use those specific parts for the build, with some minor upgrades and tweaks to it. For example, I'm pretty sure that Echo One puts a Mad Bull blue bucking in all their guns to replace the stock bucking that comes in the China clones.
Which is a really good choice, honestly, I will say. I mean,
yeah, for a stock bucking, I'd much rather have that than the black random D-Boys one that no one ever talks about ever because you throw it away when you get it.
Yeah, because, like, a lot of guns, okay, so, like, take Lancer Tactical, SEMA, JG, and D-Boys into account for a second here. A lot of those guns, say you just order all those from Airsoft GI, and they're all the same tier weapon. You get them all out, and 2 out of the 4 of them, so half of them, have accuracy issues because they weren't put together right, they're kind of weird, they fire left and right all the time, and that kind of stuff, and only 1 or 2 of them fires pretty straight. Then you get an Echo One gun, it fires really straight, and so that's like one thing that they really sell on, is that when you get their gun, is it's almost always going to work just right out of the box. So I know there's always going to be QC issues, there's always going to be that one gun that just blew up as soon as the person pulled the trigger, no matter what company it comes from, but Echo One guns really do have a really good quality control. So I rarely get somebody messaging me saying, hey, my Echo One gun I bought has really bad accuracy issues right out of the box, can you help me fix it? I always get questions that are like, hey, my D-Boys, or hey, my, JG, Lancer Tactical, SEMA, it has really bad accuracy issues, or something funny's going on with it and I can't figure out what's up with it. So it's mainly because SEMA, JG, D-Boys, Lancer Tactical are not guaranteed by anybody other than the retailer, which says you just get like a 30-day little warranty, and you're going to have to ship it back and all this stuff, and you might have to pay to fix it. So, but with Echo One, you get a warranty, 30 days, all kinds of stuff. It's more guaranteed, basically. So if you want something that you kind of can rely on, I'd say Echo One. But if you want something you just want to build off of purely, D-Boys, JG, SEMA, Lancer Tactical, that's the better brand there.
Yeah.
Because Echo One is both a good starter rifle and a good upgrade rifle.
Yeah, so I think you get like the best of both worlds. It's almost like having personal security, where I want to get into the sport. I want a decent gun. Maybe it's a backup gun. You want to tech on it later, or maybe you're buying a new primary. The Echo One, there's a better chance it will work right. There's a higher chance it will work better than the equivalent JG, D-Boys, or SEMA, whatever it copied. For example, the Echo One Scar L they had for a long time, it was quite literally a D-Boys Scar L with Echo One trademark stamped on the back, Echo One trademark stamped on the gearbox shell, and a Mad Bull blue bucking. That was it. It was the same gun.
Yeah.
However, what they did is, since they had to install the Mad Bull blue bucking, it ensured that the hop up and barrel were all aligned properly before selling it. Plus, it came with their warranty. So it was only like $50 or $60 more, and it came with a $10 bucking, so now it's really only $40 or $50 more, and a warranty, and insurance that the accuracy was at least decent out of the box. So that's definitely worth another $40 on a gun that's just as upgradable as the D-Boys one. So you're not losing out there.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, that is the end of this episode. So,
yeah.
We've gone over all of our topics, we've discussed it through and through, and I believe we have gone over our time limit, but like we said last episode,
no surprise there.
We're pretty much screwing it over because we can't keep time worth anything, so...
I think we just extend our time limit. We'll screw the whole 45 minutes.
We'll just keep extending it.
An hour and 15 minutes.
We'll just keep extending it, and just see where we get from there.
Yeah.
But that'll have to do it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back next week. Be sure to go on Airsoft Society and ask some questions on the thread that Ryan started, who is Legacy. And, ask some questions, give a suggestion. We've got a lot of suggestions over there already that we're working on implementing. And if you don't want to go over to Airsoft Society and, do all that, you can actually do it on YouTube. Comment below on this video, and we'll see what we can do about it. we will see you guys next week.
See you guys.